Well, I'm only here by the grace of God, and I give my Creator all the credit in the world for allowing me to have the greatest job in the world. My name is Speedpots Brian Cladoosby. I've been on my tribal council for 32 years. I've been the chairman of my people for 20 years, and they support me 100% as your president of NCAI. I've got 11 council members that are in a canoe paddling in the same direction. No R's, no D's, no cliques, no disputes, no family battles, nothing. And I live in a great time right now to be able to do this, and I just give God the glory for allowing me to do it. And also my wife Nina, the First Lady of Indian Country. Nina. Nina and I will be in Pueblo country next month celebrating our 39th wedding anniversary. I put in for a Congressional Medal of Honor for her. But welcome to NCAI, especially you first-timers. We'll try to go easy on you. It's going to be like a fire hose. Got a lot coming at you here in the next couple days, and I hope you are able to learn a lot and bring some good stuff back home. And I just want to say that this morning I delivered the 15th annual State of Indian Nations address. It was the fourth and final State of the Indian Nations address as your president. And you would think after this morning I would feel exhausted, but I feel inspired and I feel invigorated. And those of you that were there were able to see that we had a standing room only crowd watching here in the nation's capital, and in the audience of thousands more tuning in across the country and around the globe. The State of Indian Nations Address is such a powerful forum for Indian country. It is a phenomenal opportunity to reach the U.S. government, the country, and the world about who we are, what we value, and how we are making a difference for our people and our fellow Americans in the 21st century, and how we are forging vibrant futures worthy of our ancestors' sacrifices. This speech also gives us the opportunity to step back and take stock of just how far we have come as Native peoples and what we have overcome as resilient, self-determined tribal nations. It gives us a platform to illustrate our achievements as governments and explain how we are working to accomplish so much more. Sharing the stories of Indian country, all of its successes, its resilience, its resurgence, is one of the favorite parts of my job as NCAI president, even when I try to put Umatilla in the wrong state. There are so many stories to tell, stories that all Americans can learn from. Just as important, the State of Indian Nations also forces us to pause for a moment to survey the course ahead, to identify the challenges and the opportunities that lay before us. We are in a time where we have a changed administration and a new Congress, and we have new challenges that are emerging. At the same time, old challenges may reappear. We find ourselves in a pivotal moment in our history. We have a new president with whom we are working to build relationships. We have a new administration. We have a new cabinet whose experience working in government and with Indian country is limited. We have new members of Congress whose awareness of and intentions for Indian country are not yet clear or defined. And we have a Supreme Court in flux with a fresh nominee. And I believe we'll be talking about that nominee later in our agenda. And while we are still evaluating if and how he will respect our sovereignty as a Supreme Court justice, we are encouraged by the fact that he actually has a track record of Indian law cases to evaluate. He's actually been able to vote on 17 tribal cases that have come before him. And I'm proud to announce that 14 of those 17 cases, he reaffirmed tribal sovereignty and tribal rights. So that is a track record that we need at the Supreme Court, someone who has an idea of Indian country, someone who has an idea of who we are, an idea of treaty rights, an idea of sovereignty. So I encourage you tribal leaders to look at this gentleman's record, and we will, I imagine, be sharing more information about his cases that he ruled on, and maybe some of you tribes here in that district where he serves might have been able to be in front of his court at one time or another. And as we look at this transition, it's not the first time that we've, as tribal leaders, have had to deal with transitions. Many of you, longtime warriors, have seen administrations come and go. And the National Congress of American Indians emerged from Indian country 73 years ago with a similarly pivotal moment. At that time, the federal government's termination and relocation policies were beginning to take hold. NCAI's founders knew that the only way to effectively resist them was to band together, to defend our lands, to defend our treaties, to defend our inherent status as sovereign governments, and our right to exist as peoples on our own terms according to our own distinct ways of life. The theme of NCAI's 1948 annual convention, held 4 years after its founding, says it all. One for all for one, united we endure. NCAI's founders also recognized that perhaps the greatest threat to sovereignty and well-being of tribal nations is ignorance. Ignorance that fosters social indifference, and most notably, bad policies that does great harm to tribal lands, communities, and lifestyles. That is why they charged NCAI with the task of promoting common understanding of the rightful place of tribal nations in the family of American governments. This charge is as important now as it was more than 7 decades ago. In my State of Indian Nations address this morning, we sent that message again, loud and clear, because as a unified organization of tribal nations, as leaders of our respective tribal nations, we are not simply decision makers, we are not just advocates, we are relationship builders. We are educators. Our job is to teach those who make decisions about the responsibility they have to respect tribal sovereignty and our government-to-government relationship, and about the obligation they have to honor our treaties and support our right to govern ourselves as tribal nations. One of my greatest role models, one of the persons I come to respect dearly over the years I've been on council, was the late Billy Frank Jr. I was so fortunate to be able to be side by side with this man through many of his travels. And he always told us, tell your story, tell your story, tell your story. This task is not easy, and it never ends. Once again, we will have, like I said, we do have a new administration, we have new agency heads, and we have new employees in these various departments, and we need to come back here and tell them our story. Our continuous education effort requires persistence. It requires a steadfast commitment, not only by tribal leaders, but by tribal governments as a whole. We must build and sustain the relationship necessary to share our capabilities as governments. We describe our priorities for our communities and to explain why we deserve to be at the policy decision-making table. And it's said that if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. We're tired of being on the menu. In this effort, where does it begin? It begins with you, Each and every one of you tribal leaders, advocates, staff that work day in and day out for your tribes and your communities. I challenge each and every one of you to go out there and tell your story, because nobody knows your story better than you do. And don't be afraid of getting tired of telling your story. Tell it over and over and over again. And I remember one elder telling me that when I come back to D.C. to tell our story, I need to bring duct tape. We call that Indian chrome at Swinomish. And I'm like, why do I need to bring duct tape? They says, well, when you tell your story, you got to rip off a piece of duct tape and put it on one ear so it doesn't go in one ear and out the other when you talk to these federal officials. You know, as we come back here and tell our stories and establish new relationships with policymakers here in D.C. and back in your home states, it's important that we tell our story. NCAI and all tribal leaders need to be able to work with anyone who supports our issues, whether you're a Democrat, whether you're a Republican, whether you're an independent, whether you're a libertarian, whether you're a vegetarian, whether you're a Rastafarian, even New England Patriot fans. We will work with you. We support anyone who supports us. We don't care the letter behind your name. If you support tribal values, if you support tribal sovereignty, if you support treaty rights, if you vote for us on our issues, we will support you. And that has to be our story and our message. So I encourage you to make a concerted effort to develop the relationships you have already built. Educate not just members of Congress and the administration, but also the general public about your tribe, its time-honored culture and values, its most pressing needs, and its plans for a brighter future. Do this not just today or this week, but every single day. Make it a centerpiece of how you lead, how your nation governs, and how it relates with other governments in your area, whether it be at the local level, the county level, the state level, or the federal level. You have taken the first step by coming here today to educate yourself about these issues, to represent your tribe, and to meet our federal trustees. As you continue these efforts, understand this. These are not uncharted waters, and this is not our first rodeo. As sovereign governments with thousands of years of experience under our belts, we have encountered these waters before. Sometimes they have been calm, and sometimes they have been rough, but we made it through them. We have navigated through them to achieve a brighter future, a brighter tomorrow for our people. Tap into the wisdom of those elders back home who passed on the leadership to you. Those leaders possess a reservoir of knowledge and experience that can guide us as we plot our course ahead. Seek out other fellow tribal leaders here this week to learn about the effective strategies that they and their nations are using to educate other governments about tribal sovereignty. Document and share how tribal governments everywhere are leading, how we are forging innovative solutions to the challenges we face, and how better policies can enable us to do even more. I'll give you a timely example. Later this week, Washington Governor Jay Inslee, my governor, will sign into law a bill recognizing dental health aid therapists, enabling tribes to secure federal funding to pay for their services. This bill, which enables tribes in Washington to follow in the healthcare footsteps of our sister tribes in Alaska, was by no means an overnight success story. It has been nearly a decade in the making for us in Washington. The bill actually died many years in the legislature. But tribal leaders, some of them that are in the room here with you today from Washington, they kept up the fight. They educated our state legislators on the importance of this program and how it is much needed in our communities, making this case that DHATS will improve the health of our people, and we persisted. How many of you remember the movie Outlaw Josie Wales? How many of you remember Chief Dan George in that movie? Well, like Chief Dan George, to get our DHAP bill through the Washington State Legislature, we must endeavor to persevere. You guys remember that line? Endeavor to persevere. This victory reminds us that when we approach this task of education strategically, when we are tireless in our outreach, we can produce good policy. Furthermore, when we sustain our outreach, we position ourselves to readily observe emerging opportunities and seize them. Opportunities, for example, to collaborate with a new crop of cabinet secretaries, including Interior Secretary nominee Ryan Zinke from Montana. Any Montana tribes in the room? At his confirmation hearing, Congressman Zinke made it clear that he intends to respect and enhance tribal sovereignty and self-determination. We also have opportunities to increase the flexibility of tribal governments to craft integrated, customized approaches to develop the workforces we need to advance our long-term priorities. There will be opportunities to modernize and expand Indian country's infrastructure, providing tribal nations a solid foundation on which to create robust economies capable of providing our citizens with job opportunities and a good quality of life at home and in our communities. We will have the opportunities to work with the federal government to forge new policies and do away with paternalistic and outdated ones to enhance our ability to build strong communities. The new administration has been very clear that jobs, the economy, and infrastructure are their top priorities. They are also the top priorities for Indian country. There is so much work to be done in these areas. For just one example, we need to modernize the Indian trade regulations to enhance tribes' abilities to generate tax revenue. The government-to-government dialogue about the Indian trade regulations is already ramping up, and I look forward to the consultation, the first consultation that will be held at my tribe, the Swinomish tribe, later this month in Washington State, and they will be held across the nation after that. And now, before I finish, I want to take a moment to recognize the efforts of our excellent Executive Director, Jackie Peta, and the outstanding staff here at NCAI. And if there's staff in the room, please stand. Let's give them a hand. I know many of our staff are out in the hallways, out at the registration desk, and everywhere. But I just want you to know that we're not a big organization. We have about 35 employees that do some amazing amount of work for all of you. And they have gone above and beyond to ensure that Indian country's voice was clearly heard from the first days of the transition to the beginnings of this new administration and Congress. Like I said, 35 individuals work every day to make sure that each new threat is met with stiff yet reasoned resistance, to make sure that Indian country capitalizes on each new opportunity. I particularly wanted to thank our staff for the swift development of our initial report on Indian country's infrastructure needs and priorities. And I believe we have a copy of that in all of the registration packets? Yeah. Yes, great. And this report sends a strong message to the administration and Congress that they initiate a conversation about how and where to invest in strengthening the nation's infrastructure, that tribal nations must be and will be a part of that conversation. The report documents our status as sovereign governments, and it gives them a track record of developing creative solutions to our infrastructure challenges. It represents an important tool for teaching the federal government about Indian country's challenges, but also about the fact that tribal governments are more than capable of meeting those challenges. In closing, I want to share a quote from NCAI's 18th Annual Convention in 1961. At the convening, Angus Wilson, chairman of the Nez Perce tribe, at the time declared, "We gather here not only mindful of heavy burdens, but also full of hope. Our faith is renewed that with our renewed effort and the cooperation of tribes, their friends, and the U.S. government working together, we'll be able to find better solutions to the problems we face," end quote. My faith is renewed, and I remain ever hopeful that through hard work, education, and a spirit of cooperation, we will reach our brighter tomorrow. Remember, we must endeavor to persevere. Good luck this week, and thank you all. God bless you, and God bless Indian country. Go Irish.